The most dangerous thing you can do is master yourself. The world teaches you to seek power outside yourself. Build wealth, gain status, become influential, make people respect you, defeat your rivals. But there is a deeper form of power that most people ignore, the power to command your own mind. Because a person who cannot control himself can never truly control anything else. He may possess money, authority, intelligence, or influence, but if his emotions, desires, fears, and impulses control him, then he remains vulnerable. Mastering your emotions is the first step toward mastering yourself because your emotional reactions often reveal where your real weaknesses are. A person may believe he is strong, intelligent, and independent, but one uncontrolled emotion can expose how easily he can be influenced. Anger can make you reckless, fear can make you retreat, jealousy can make you compare yourself with others, pride can prevent you from admitting mistakes. The desire for approval can make you change your values just to be accepted. None of these emotions are automatically bad. They are natural parts of human nature. The real problem begins when you stop choosing your response and start obeying whatever emotion happens to be strongest in the moment. Imagine someone deliberately insults you. Your first instinct may be to respond immediately because you feel that remaining silent will make you look weak. Your pride demands an answer. Your anger demands revenge. But the moment you pause, something important happens. You create distance between the emotion and the action. You may still feel angry, but you are no longer forced to act from anger. You can observe the situation, understand the intention behind the insult, and decide whether responding actually serves you. This small pause is one of the most powerful forms of self-control. Anyone can react. Strength begins when you can choose. Anger is particularly dangerous because it often creates the illusion of power. When you are angry, your body becomes energized and your mind becomes focused on the threat. You may feel fearless, but your judgment can become narrow. You may say things that cannot be taken back or make decisions that create problems long after the anger disappears. Someone who understands this can provoke you deliberately. They do not need to defeat you directly. They only need to make you lose control. Once you become predictable, they can push the right buttons whenever they want. The person who masters anger does not eliminate it. Instead, he learns to use it as information. Anger may tell you that a boundary has been crossed, that something matters, or that action may be necessary. But anger should never automatically decide what that action will be. You remain the decision maker. Fear must be treated in a similar way. Fear can protect you from genuine danger, but it can also prevent growth. Fear of failure may stop you from starting. Fear of rejection may prevent you from speaking honestly. Fear of criticism may keep you from showing your abilities. Fear of uncertainty may keep you trapped in familiar situations, even when they are no longer good for you. Mastering fear does not mean pretending that you are fearless. It means learning to ask whether the fear is warning you about real danger or simply discomfort. There is a major difference between the two. If a situation is genuinely dangerous, caution is intelligent. But if the only danger is embarrassment, failure, or the possibility of being judged, then allowing fear to control your decision may keep your life unnecessarily small. Jealousy can also become a hidden source of weakness. When another person succeeds, jealousy may tell you that their success somehow makes you less valuable. You start comparing your life with theirs and measuring your progress against someone else's achievements. This creates frustration because there will always be someone who has more, knows more, or appears to be further ahead. Emotional mastery allows you to transform jealousy into information. Ask yourself what exactly you admire about that person. Perhaps you want their discipline, confidence, skills, freedom, or achievements. Once you identify the real desire beneath the jealousy, you can turn it into a goal rather than allowing it to become resentment. Pride is another emotion that requires careful control. Healthy pride can give you dignity, but excessive pride makes you defensive. If you cannot admit that you are wrong, you cannot learn. If every criticism feels like an attack, you will reject information that could help you improve. A person who has mastered his emotions understands that admitting a mistake does not make him weak. In many cases, it demonstrates confidence because he is secure enough to face reality without protecting his ego. Emotional mastery also requires understanding your personal triggers. Everyone has certain words, situations, or behaviors that create stronger reactions. Maybe you become angry when someone ignores you. Maybe criticism makes you defensive. Maybe rejection makes you desperate to prove yourself. These reactions often come from deeper insecurities. Once you know your triggers, you can prepare for them. You can recognize the emotional reaction before it becomes an action. This makes you much harder to manipulate. People may still try to provoke you, but they cannot guarantee the response they want. You become the person who decides what happens next. Mastering your emotions does not mean becoming cold. In fact, it allows you to experience emotions more clearly because you are no longer afraid of them. You can feel anger without becoming cruel. You can feel fear without becoming paralyzed. You can feel disappointment without surrendering. You can feel excitement without making reckless decisions. You can feel pride without becoming arrogant. Your emotions remain powerful, but they are no longer your rulers. This is the real meaning of emotional mastery. You are not trying to destroy the emotional side of yourself. You are training it. You are teaching yourself that feelings are signals, not commands. When you learn to pause, observe, and choose, you become more difficult to provoke, more difficult to manipulate, and more capable of making decisions that serve your long-term purpose. The person who can remain calm while others lose control possesses a rare advantage. He does not need to dominate every situation because he has already learned to dominate his own reactions. And once you gain control over your emotions, you begin to discover that the greatest source of power was never outside you. It was always the ability to decide who you would become when the world tried to decide for you. Control your impulses because every moment of your life contains a choice between what you want now and what you truly want later. An impulse is a sudden urge that demands immediate action. It tells you to speak when silence would be wiser, to spend when saving would be better, to quit when patience would make you stronger, to seek pleasure when discipline is required, or to react when thinking would protect you. The danger is not that impulses exist. Every human being experiences them. The danger begins when you assume that every feeling deserves to become an action. The person who obeys every impulse eventually becomes predictable, and anything predictable can be controlled. If someone knows that an insult will make you angry, they can provoke you whenever they want. If they know that loneliness makes you desperate, they can control you through attention. If they know that temptation easily defeats your discipline, they can distract you from your goals. Self-mastery begins when you create a space between feeling and action. That space may last only a few seconds, but within those seconds, you regain your ability to choose. Imagine someone says something disrespectful to you. Your body reacts immediately, you feel anger rising, your pride becomes involved, and your mind begins creating a response. The impulse says, answer now, but instead of obeying it, you pause. You breathe, you observe. You ask yourself what will happen if you respond, and what will happen if you remain silent. Suddenly, the situation changes. The other person may have tried to control your emotional state, but your refusal to react has taken that control away. You have not become weak. You have become deliberate. This is why silence can sometimes be more powerful than an immediate response. Impulse control also determines whether you achieve long-term goals. Every meaningful goal requires delayed gratification. You may want to watch entertainment instead of studying. You may want to sleep instead of training. You may want to spend money instead of saving it. You may want to stop working because the process has become uncomfortable. The impulse always speaks in the language of the present moment. It asks, what feels good right now? Discipline asks a different question. What will make me stronger tomorrow? This difference separates temporary satisfaction from lasting progress. You do not need to reject every pleasure. You simply need to make sure pleasure remains your choice rather than your master. A disciplined person can enjoy entertainment without becoming addicted to it. He can spend money without becoming careless. He can rest without becoming lazy. He can enjoy success without becoming dependent on constant rewards. He decides when enough is enough. Another dangerous impulse is the desire to speak immediately. People often damage relationships and opportunities because they allow emotions to choose their words. During anger, they reveal secrets, make accusations, insult others, or make promises they cannot keep. Later, when the emotion disappears, they regret what they said. But words cannot always be taken back. A moment of self-control can prevent months of consequences. You do not have to answer every question immediately. You do not have to defend yourself against every accusation. You do not have to participate in every argument. Sometimes the most intelligent response is to wait until your emotions become quieter and your judgment becomes clearer. Controlling impulses also means understanding your environment. Many people rely entirely on willpower, but willpower becomes weaker when you constantly place yourself around temptation. If your phone destroys your concentration, move it away while working. If certain people constantly pull you into drama, create distance. If unnecessary shopping makes you spend money, remove easy access to those temptations. If social media repeatedly steals your attention, create limits around it. Self-mastery is not about proving that you can resist every temptation. It is about designing your life so that unnecessary temptation has less influence over you. Every time you resist an impulse, you strengthen a pattern. Every time you surrender automatically, you strengthen another pattern. One decision may seem insignificant, but repeated decisions become habits, and habits eventually become character. If you always quit when something becomes uncomfortable, your mind learns that discomfort means escape. If you repeatedly continue despite temporary discomfort, your mind learns that discomfort can be tolerated. This is how discipline is built, not through one dramatic moment, but through hundreds of small choices that nobody else sees. The strongest form of impulse control is not simply refusing bad habits. It is learning to tolerate the space between desire and satisfaction. You can want something without immediately having it. You can feel anger without expressing it. You can experience fear without running from it. You can feel the desire to quit without actually quitting. You can experience rejection without desperately seeking approval. The emotion may be real, but it does not have authority over your behavior. This creates freedom. You become less dependent on the outside world because your actions are no longer controlled by every temporary feeling. You become calmer under pressure, more focused during difficulty, and more capable of protecting your long-term goals. Other people may still attempt to provoke you, tempt you, or pressure you, but they cannot easily control you if you have trained yourself to pause before acting. The world will always offer you reasons to react immediately, but mastery means refusing to give every moment that power. Your impulse may tell you what it wants, but you decide whether it deserves to be obeyed. Your desire may demand attention, but you decide where your attention belongs. Your emotions may create pressure, but you decide what action is intelligent. This is the discipline of self-command, not eliminating desire, but becoming stronger than the desire when necessary. Turning weakness into discipline begins with accepting a truth that most people prefer to avoid. Every person has weaknesses, but those weaknesses do not have to remain weaknesses forever. What matters is what you do after you recognize them. Some people hide their weaknesses behind excuses, anger, pride, or blame. They say they are distracted because life is difficult. They quit because circumstances were unfair, or they avoid challenges because they are simply not ready. These explanations may provide temporary comfort, but they also prevent growth. If you want to master yourself, you must become honest enough to identify the parts of your character that repeatedly hold you back. You cannot transform what you refuse to see. If procrastination controls you, admit it. If criticism makes you defensive, admit it. If you constantly seek approval, admit it. If fear keeps you from taking action, admit it. Recognition is not weakness. Recognition is the beginning of control. Once you understand your weakness, you can stop treating it as part of your permanent identity and start treating it as an area that requires training. Imagine someone who constantly procrastinates. Every time an important task appears, he delays it. He tells himself that he will begin later when he has more energy, more motivation, or more time. But later becomes tomorrow, tomorrow becomes next week, and eventually the opportunity disappears. The problem is not always laziness. Often the deeper problem is the inability to tolerate temporary discomfort. The task feels difficult, so the mind searches for an escape. Discipline begins when you stop waiting for the feeling to change and take action anyway. You do not need to work for 10 hours immediately. You can begin with a small commitment. Work for 20 minutes, finish one task, remove your phone, repeat the process tomorrow. The goal is to train yourself to act even when your emotions are asking for comfort. Every time you do that, the weakness becomes slightly weaker and your discipline becomes slightly stronger. Fear works in the same way. Fear can convince you that avoiding something is safer than facing it. You may fear failure, rejection, criticism, embarrassment, or uncertainty. When you avoid the situation, you feel relief, and that relief teaches your mind that avoidance works. The next time the situation appears, the fear can become even stronger. Discipline breaks this cycle by teaching you to face discomfort gradually. You do not need to confront your greatest fear in one dramatic moment. Start with something manageable. Speak when you normally remain silent. Take responsibility for a small challenge. Share an idea even though people may disagree. Make one decision without seeking everyone's approval. Each experience provides evidence that discomfort is survivable. Eventually, confidence begins to come from experience rather than imagination. Another weakness that often prevents self-mastery is the inability to accept criticism. A person with a fragile ego may hear one negative comment and immediately become defensive. Instead of asking whether the criticism contains something useful, he focuses on proving the other person wrong. This protects his pride but prevents improvement. Discipline requires emotional distance. When someone criticizes you, listen before reacting. You do not have to accept every opinion as truth, but you should be strong enough to examine it. If the criticism is accurate, learn from it. If it is unfair, let it pass. Your goal is not to protect your ego at every moment. Your goal is to become better. This attitude turns criticism from a threat into information. Weakness can also appear as impatience. Many people want results immediately, and when progress takes longer than expected, they lose motivation. They start one goal, become frustrated, abandon it, and move towards something else. Over time, they become experts at starting, but strangers to consistency. Discipline teaches you to remain committed after excitement disappears. The beginning of a goal is usually easy because motivation is high. The difficult part comes later. When progress becomes slow and nobody is watching, that is where character is built. Continuing during those quiet periods teaches you that your actions do not have to depend on constant excitement. Small repeated actions become powerful because they change your identity. If you repeatedly keep promises to yourself, you begin to trust yourself. If you repeatedly break those promises, you begin to doubt yourself. This is why ordinary decisions matter. Waking up when you said you would, finishing a task before entertainment, exercising when you would rather remain comfortable, refusing unnecessary arguments, and returning to your routine after a bad day may seem insignificant, but these actions are shaping your character. Discipline is not created through one heroic decision. It is created through repetition. You must also understand that failure does not cancel discipline. Everyone will have moments when they lose focus, make mistakes, or return to an old habit. The dangerous response is to turn one mistake into an identity. Missing one day does not mean you are incapable of consistency. Losing your temper once does not mean you cannot control your emotions. Making one poor decision does not mean you are doomed to repeat it. The disciplined person learns to recover quickly. He studies what went wrong, changes his approach, and continues. Recovery is part of mastery because life will always contain setbacks. Your goal is not to become someone who never falls. Your goal is to become someone who refuses to remain on the ground. Environment also matters. If you constantly surround yourself with distractions, unhealthy habits, and people who encourage weakness, self-control becomes harder. You can make discipline easier by designing your environment around the person you want to become. Remove unnecessary distractions, create routines, keep your priorities visible. Spend time around people who respect growth and responsibility. Do not constantly test your willpower when you can simply remove the temptation. The deeper lesson is that weakness can become a map. Your weaknesses show you exactly where your training is needed. If you are impatient, train patience. If you are easily distracted, train focus. If you fear rejection, train independence. If you constantly seek approval, train self-respect. If you struggle to finish what you start, train consistency. Instead of hating your weaknesses, study them. Instead of hiding them, work on them. Instead of allowing them to define you, use them to build discipline. Over time, the weakness that once controlled your decisions can become the very area where you develop the greatest strength. Becoming impossible to manipulate begins with understanding yourself so clearly that other people cannot easily control your emotions, decisions, or behavior. Manipulation becomes powerful when someone discovers what you fear, what you desire, what makes you angry, and what you are willing to sacrifice to gain approval. A person may believe he is independent, yet if one person's criticism can destroy his confidence, one rejection can change his direction, or one insult can make him lose control, then he is not completely free. The first defense is self-awareness. You must know your emotional triggers before someone else learns how to use them. If you know that criticism makes you defensive, you can recognize the reaction when it appears. If you know that rejection makes you desperate for approval, you can pause before changing yourself to please someone. If you know that anger makes you reckless, you can refuse to make important decisions while emotional. The moment you understand your own patterns, manipulation becomes more difficult because you can see what is happening before you automatically respond. One of the strongest forms of manipulation is the need for approval. When you desperately want people to like you, they gain influence over your choices. You may agree with opinions you do not believe, tolerate disrespect you would normally reject, or remain in situations that damage your peace because you are afraid of losing someone's approval. You may even hide your ambitions because you fear people will judge you. Gradually, your life becomes a performance designed to satisfy other people's expectations. Self-mastery requires you to understand that approval is pleasant but not necessary. You can appreciate praise without becoming dependent on it. You can hear criticism without allowing it to define you. You can accept that some people will misunderstand you and still continue according to your values. This does not mean becoming arrogant or refusing advice. It means developing the ability to separate useful feedback from emotional pressure. Boundaries are another powerful defense against manipulation. A boundary tells people what you will accept and what you will not accept. But a boundary becomes meaningful only when your actions support it. If someone repeatedly disrespects you and you continue giving them unlimited access, they learn that your boundaries have no consequences. If someone constantly creates unnecessary drama and you always participate, the pattern continues. Self-mastery means being willing to step back when a boundary is crossed. You do not need to threaten people or create unnecessary conflict. Sometimes simply reducing access, ending a conversation, or walking away is enough. The ability to say no is one of the clearest signs that you are becoming independent. Manipulative people also create urgency because urgency reduces careful thinking. They may tell you that you must decide immediately, that you will lose the opportunity, or that refusing means you do not care. Pressure makes people emotional, and emotional people often make poor decisions. A disciplined person knows how to slow down. You can say that you need time to think. You can ask questions. You can gather information. You can compare choices. A genuine opportunity should not require you to destroy your judgment. When someone becomes aggressive simply because you want time to decide, their reaction may reveal more about their intentions than their words do. Another important defense is learning to observe behavior rather than believing words automatically. People can promise anything, they can apologize, praise you, claim they have changed, or make impressive statements about their intentions. But repeated behavior reveals patterns. If someone repeatedly crosses your boundaries after promising not to, their actions are more important than their promises. If someone constantly creates problems and then offers emotional apologies, the apologies should not erase the pattern. Observation protects you from being controlled by temporary performances. You should also be careful about how quickly you reveal personal information. Your fears, insecurities, ambitions, and vulnerabilities are parts of your inner world. Not everyone deserves immediate access to them. Trust should develop through consistent behavior. Being private does not mean being dishonest. It means understanding that information can create influence. The more someone knows about what you fear or desperately want, the easier it may become for them to pressure you. Independence also reduces manipulation. If your entire emotional, financial, or practical life depends on one person, your ability to disagree with that person becomes weaker. Building your own skills, knowledge, resources, relationships, and options gives you freedom. You do not need to reject help from others, but you should avoid making one person's approval the foundation of your existence. The person who has alternatives is less vulnerable to threats. Emotional control remains at the center of everything. If someone can make you furious with a few words, they possess a button that you have given them permission to press. If someone can make you desperate simply by withdrawing attention, they have influence over your emotional state. The goal is not to stop caring about people. The goal is to care without becoming dependent. You can love someone without surrendering your judgment. You can respect someone without obeying every demand. You can listen to someone without allowing them to define your identity. The willingness to walk away is perhaps the strongest protection against manipulation. When you believe you must keep every relationship, opportunity, or person's approval, fear becomes a chain. But when you accept that some things can be lost without destroying you, pressure becomes less powerful. You can leave an unhealthy situation. You can reject an unfair demand. You can end a conversation that has become manipulative. You can choose temporary discomfort instead of permanent dependence. Becoming difficult to manipulate does not mean becoming suspicious, cold, or isolated. It means becoming conscious. You understand your triggers, protect your boundaries, slow down important decisions, observe patterns, and maintain enough independence to make choices according to your own judgment. Other people may still influence you, but they cannot easily control you because you have stopped giving them automatic access to your emotions and decisions. Your mind remains yours, and that is one of the strongest forms of self-mastery. Mastering your mind before seeking power is one of the deepest principles of self-mastery because external power cannot compensate for internal weakness. Many people spend their lives chasing money, status recognition, influence, authority, or control over others because they believe these things will finally make them feel secure. But if your mind remains undisciplined, gaining more power may only make your weaknesses stronger. If anger controls you, greater authority gives your anger more opportunities to cause damage. If greed controls you, greater wealth may never feel like enough. If insecurity controls you, more recognition will only create a greater need for approval. If fear controls you, influence will not automatically make you courageous. This is why the first territory you must conquer is yourself. Before trying to control circumstances, learn to control the mind that responds to those circumstances. Your attention is one of the most valuable forms of power you possess. Wherever your attention goes repeatedly, your thoughts and behavior begin to follow. If you constantly allow notifications, gossip, arguments, entertainment, comparison, and other people's opinions to capture your attention, your mind becomes fragmented. You may believe you are choosing freely, but your attention is being pulled in dozens of directions. A person who cannot control his attention will struggle to control his life because everything around him can interrupt his priorities. Mental mastery begins with selection. You decide what deserves your attention and what does not. Not every argument deserves a response. Not every criticism deserves your emotional energy. Not every opportunity deserves your time. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your mind. When you learn to direct your attention deliberately, you begin to reclaim your power. Another important part of mastering your mind is controlling your interpretation of events. Two people can experience the same failure and create completely different meanings from it. One person sees failure as proof that he is incapable. Another sees it as information showing him what needs improvement. The event may be similar, but the interpretation changes the response. This does not mean pretending that painful experiences are positive. It means refusing to let the first emotional interpretation become the final truth. If someone criticizes you, you can immediately decide that they hate you, or you can examine whether their words contain useful information. If you fail, you can call yourself a failure, or you can study what went wrong and improve your method. If someone rejects you, you can decide that you are worthless, or you can recognize that rejection is one person's decision rather than a complete definition of your identity. A disciplined mind examines before accepting. Patience is another sign of mental mastery. An undisciplined mind wants immediate results. It becomes frustrated when progress is slow and begins searching for a new direction. This creates a cycle where you constantly start but rarely finish. You begin a project with excitement, encounter difficulty, lose motivation, and abandon it. Then you find another goal and repeat the same pattern. Mental discipline teaches you to remain committed when excitement disappears. You understand that important achievements often require long periods of effort without immediate rewards. You continue because the goal matters, not because every day feels inspiring. This is where discipline becomes stronger than motivation. Motivation depends heavily on emotion, but discipline depends on decision. Mastering your mind also requires controlling desire. Your mind can convince you that you need something simply because you want it. You may believe you need constant attention, expensive possessions, endless entertainment, or another person's approval. But desire is not always necessity. A person who immediately obeys every desire becomes dependent on whatever attracts his attention in the moment. A person who can pause before satisfying desire becomes more independent. You can want something without immediately pursuing it. You can enjoy success without becoming addicted to recognition. You can experience temptation without surrendering your priorities. This ability creates freedom because your choices are no longer controlled by every temporary craving. Calmness under pressure is another form of mental power. When people become stressed, they often lose perspective. They speak too quickly, make emotional decisions, reveal information they should have protected, or accept poor choices simply because they feel trapped. A calm mind creates space for better judgment. Remaining calm does not mean being passive. It means refusing to allow pressure to destroy your ability to think. When everyone else is reacting, the person who can pause and observe often has the clearest view of the situation. Your identity also needs protection. If your entire identity is based on achievements, failure can destroy your confidence. If your identity depends on approval, criticism can make you collapse. If your identity depends on status, losing that status can make you feel worthless. A stronger identity is built around character and values. You know what kind of person you want to be even when circumstances change. You can lose a position without losing yourself. You can experience failure without becoming a failure. You can receive criticism without surrendering your judgment. This creates resilience, and resilience is essential for anyone who wants meaningful influence. The more power you eventually gain, the more important this inner discipline becomes. Power magnifies what is already inside you. It does not automatically make you wise, patient, or honorable. If your mind is chaotic, power can make that chaos more destructive. If your mind is disciplined, power becomes a tool rather than a temptation. The real goal is not to control everyone around you. It is to become so disciplined internally that you no longer require perfect circumstances to remain stable. You control your attention, examine your thoughts, regulate your desires, remain calm under pressure, and make decisions according to long-term purpose. Once you can command your own mind, external power becomes less important because you are no longer desperate to prove yourself to the world. You have already gained the most important form of authority, the ability to choose your thoughts, actions, and direction, even when circumstances are trying to choose them for you. Self-control becomes your greatest weapon when you understand that the most important battle is not against other people, but against the parts of yourself that constantly try to pull you away from your purpose. Every day, you face moments when emotion, temptation, fear, anger, comfort, or pressure asks you to surrender your judgment. Someone insults you and you want to respond immediately. Someone offers you an easy pleasure and you want it now. A difficult task appears and you want to quit. Someone criticizes you and your pride demands an explanation. These moments may appear small, but they reveal whether you are truly in command of yourself. Self-control means creating a space between what you feel and what you choose to do. You may not control the first emotion that appears, but you can control what happens next. This is what makes self-control so powerful. A person who has no control over himself can be influenced by almost anyone who understands his weaknesses. If anger controls him, provoking him becomes easy. If fear controls him, threatening him becomes easy. If approval controls him, flattering him becomes easy. If desire controls him, tempting him becomes easy. But when you develop self-control, these weaknesses become less accessible to other people. They may try to push your buttons, but you no longer react automatically. You observe the situation and decide what response serves your purpose. Imagine someone deliberately insults you in front of others. Your pride immediately wants to defend itself. Your anger tells you that you must prove your strength, but you pause. You realize that the person may be trying to provoke you. Instead of giving them the reaction they expect, you remain calm. You do not need to prove that you are strong because your behavior already demonstrates control. This does not mean allowing people to disrespect you. You can respond firmly when necessary, but your response comes from judgment rather than uncontrolled emotion. That difference is important because aggression can be manipulated, while self-control is much harder to manipulate. Self-control also protects your long-term goals from short-term desires. Every meaningful achievement requires you to delay gratification at some point. You may need to work when you would rather relax, save money when you want to spend, study when entertainment is available, or continue practicing when progress feels slow. Your impulses focus on the present. Your discipline focuses on the future. The ability to choose the future over the present is one of the clearest signs of maturity. You are not rejecting pleasure completely. You are refusing to let pleasure decide your priorities. You decide when to rest, when to work, when to enjoy yourself, and when to say no. This makes your life more intentional. Another powerful form of self-control is knowing when to remain silent. Many conflicts become larger because people speak while emotions are high. One angry sentence creates another angry response, and suddenly a small disagreement becomes a serious conflict. Silence gives you time to understand the situation. It allows emotions to settle and gives you the opportunity to choose words carefully. You do not have to respond to every accusation. You do not have to defend yourself against every opinion. You do not have to participate in every argument. Your attention is valuable, and self-control teaches you to spend it where it matters. This principle applies to your digital life as well. Every notification, message, video, argument, and distraction competes for your attention. If you allow everything to interrupt you, your mind becomes fragmented. Self-control means deciding when you will focus and refusing to let every external demand control your attention. You may still use entertainment and social media, but you use them intentionally instead of allowing them to consume whatever time remains. Over time, this creates concentration, and concentration gives you an advantage because many people have trained themselves to respond to every distraction. Self-control also creates confidence because it teaches you that you can trust yourself. Real confidence is not the belief that nothing will ever go wrong. It is the belief that when something does go wrong, you will be able to respond without destroying yourself. You know that you can remain calm under pressure. You know that you can recover from failure. You know that you can resist temptation. You know that you can make difficult decisions even when they are uncomfortable. Every time you demonstrate discipline, you create evidence that you can depend on yourself. This internal confidence is stronger than confidence based on compliments because it does not disappear when other people change their opinions. Self-control becomes even more important when you gain influence or authority. The more power you possess, the greater the consequences of your emotional decisions. If you are ruled by anger, authority gives you more opportunities to use anger destructively. If you are ruled by ego, influence may make you believe that you are always right. If you are ruled by greed, success may never satisfy you. But a disciplined person understands that power increases responsibility. He does not act simply because he can. He considers consequences, listens carefully, and makes decisions according to purpose rather than impulse. Another important part of self-control is the ability to walk away. Sometimes you do not need to win. Sometimes you need to protect your peace, time, reputation, or future. If someone constantly provokes you, leaving may be stronger than arguing. If an opportunity requires you to betray your values, refusing it may be more valuable than accepting it. If a relationship repeatedly destroys your stability, creating distance may be necessary. Walking away requires the ability to tolerate temporary discomfort, and that ability makes you harder to control. The person who cannot tolerate discomfort can be pressured easily, but the person who can endure temporary difficulty can make decisions based on long-term values. The deeper meaning of self-control is therefore not simply resisting temptation. It is becoming the person who remains aligned with his purpose, even when circumstances are trying to pull him away. You can feel anger without becoming cruel. You can feel fear without becoming paralyzed. You can feel desire without becoming desperate. You can experience failure without surrendering your identity. Your emotions remain part of you, but they no longer command you. Your impulses may appear, but they do not automatically become actions. Pressure may increase, but your judgment remains intact. This is why self-control becomes such a powerful form of strength. It allows you to remain calm when others are emotional, patient when others are desperate, focused when others are distracted, and deliberate when others are impulsive. The person who controls himself does not need to control everyone around him because he has already mastered the most important territory, his own mind.